Thank you, Blanca. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to give me this opportunity to present our activity. So my presentation about remedial conservation in case of disaster. We'll start with a short presentation of our activities on how do we use nuclear techniques for remedial conservation. And I will show you 3 examples. A treatment. First one is the treatment of French National Archive after a large-scale disaster. Then the energy rescue of a mummy after flooding in the museum. And finally, we said the last chance consolidation by radio-Curable Resin of a polychrome wooden sculpture. So my institute is ARC-Nucleart. It's kind of a small structure. Oh, sorry. Okay. My institution is small. It's a kind of small structure, but unique for cultural heritage conservation. It is born in the 70s from the idea of using nuclear techniques for heritage conservation. It is located on the global seat of the French Commission for Atomic Energy, and it is both a workshop for conservation and a laboratory. A workshop with several specialties about archaeological, waterlogged organic material and wood, about conservation, restoration of wooden sculpture and polychrome historic wood, and also any kind of biocidal treatment. I mean, biocidal treatment for any kind of collection that we will see after. And we are also some research and validation of our competencies. So the first idea, when we use gamma radiation for cultural heritage, it's just only to fight against biodeterioration. Our main enemies, we said, pests are insects and fungi, mainly roots and also mold. The idea is very simple, is to just exposure to gamma ray to get the biocidal effect of this kind of radiation. And this is just a matter of dose. So we have a window of dose from around kilogray to kill insect to some kilogray up to 10 kilogray to kill molds and fungi. And we must be aware about adverse side effects that we mainly come after some tens of kilograms. So we will irradiate into this window. We have treated in our workshop tens of thousands cubic meters since 50 years. It is furniture, wooden sculpture, ethnological objects, musical instruments, natural history, specimen, modern art, also a lot. And we have some exotic customer mummies. The most famous one was the mummy of Francis II. We treat also frozen baby mammoths. Recently, we treat the archaeological remains of a medieval harbor. These are just an example. The other technique using gamma radiation that we use for cultural heritage conservation is the so-called nuclear method. This is the consolidation by densification after inflammation of radio-Curable resin, and then radio-curing using the gamma ray to cure the resin inside porous material. It is a very efficient technique, but irreversible. So it must be justified when we use it. We use it in some cases as the last chance technique. We use it sometimes when we want to conserve the function of some artifacts like parquet. You still want to work on this parquet or some furniture sometimes. And we use it also in some cases for the treatment of archaeological waterlogged wood, mainly when it is associated to metal, when the wood is associated to metal, to avoid the corrosion of metal when using conventional hydrophilic material that are the normal way for conservation of from waterlogged wood. Our tool, our irradiator is Cobalt 60 2012 irradiator with a pool in which we can store the source. And the source are industrial sealed source, and we have those weights around kilogram in front of the source rack, which is 1.6 meter large and 0.8 meter high. The first example I want to display, to show, is the fungicide treatment of 11 kilometers of our national archive. It is a large-scale disaster that came after 1 year of closure of archive storage building. It was due to structural disorder in the building. And when people go inside, they discover 5 centimeters of water covering the 5th basement. That was, it is a huge building of 8,000 square meters. So more than half of the different packaging were contaminated with mold. It includes a lot of historical administrative folder, and also a lot of plans, architect plans mainly. The usual way archives were treated in France at that time was the fumigation with ethylene oxide, but because of drastic regulatory rules using this very dangerous process, the only available facility were not able to treat such huge quantities in less than 6 years. So the alternative was the gamma irradiation. Of course, gamma irradiation was known to induce a small but cellulose depolymerization, but at that time there were some experiences in the world, very important experiences in Netherlands, Brazil, and Romania. So we know that it was possible to use it with not so much adverse effect. So it was chosen. And we have to define the dose, but we do some biological experiments with specialists at the laboratory of research and of historical monuments in France. We determined that 3 kilograms was enough to kill every kind of mold that were in this contamination. And for the maximum dose, we used scientific literature to say that until 10 kilograms, there is no real adverse effects. Of course, this huge quantity was too much for us in our small irrigator. So it was decided to use big industrial facilities that used to treat medical device for sterilization. And they have huge capacity, and up to 100 those coefficients even on large pallets. So it was very interesting for the case of standard folder that can be used in pallets. In the case of non-standard format material that were not so much, let's say, material different than paper, we have complementary study, and we use our irradiator with non-automated procedure. So it was more easy for us. We treat 52 processing unit arrangement, let's say. So here are some kind of arrangement we made with plant walls in one cage trolley, long archival storage box, portfolio. And we have also a lot of control, systematic routine control with dosimeter. And we were really in the target window of those. And also statistical biological control by ETP tests, which measure the cleaning activity, the metabolism, let's say. Also with some classical culture on medium just before those levels that were done by other organisms. So now the second example is the emergency rescue of mummy after flood. The flood came after the mummy had been moved to the vault room during works in the museum, and it was submerged for about something more than 48 hours, and it was took out as soon as possible when it was accessible after water withdrawal. The personnel of the museum have the good idea to quickly frozen the mummy, and then it lasts like this for 4 years before they asked us to do the disinfection and also the thawing and drying. So we had 2 steps. First step, irradiation for fungicidal and bacterial treatment at dose of 8 kilograms. And then freeze drying. Freeze drying is the sublimation of ice in the vacuum to avoid capillarity force during drying, so no chemical harms, and also to avoid wet condition during the drying, and to avoid new biological contamination. So the preparation of the irradiation was like at the frozen state. So we have to maintain the frozen state with a special polystyrene box with CO2 dry ice to maintain a temperature of around -30 Celsius. We do also some simulation with Monte Carlo calculation. And you can see here the trajectory of some gamma ray. You can see that it is everywhere. And by iteration of a huge number of such trajectory, you can reach the dose inside the mummy. And you have here the example of what can be calculated inside the mummy. So we knew that we need to turn the mummy at a mid-irradiation to homogenize the dose. So the irradiation was for 2 times 9 hours of gamma irradiation, turning and supplying of dry ice at mid-irradiation in the night. I had a date with mummy in the night. It was something special. And final dosimetry was very well in the range from 6.5 kilogray at the level of the head to 9 kilogray on the side. Then it was unwrapped and we placed some thermocouples for the freeze drying, and the freeze drying under vacuum take 12 days before temperature rose over 0 Celsius, which means that sublimation ends. The weight loss was of 10 kilogram, which means that we sublimate 10 liters of water. Last example is completely different. It is the consolidation of servacent wooden sculpture with extremely severe xylophagus attack. So the idea of this kind of consolidation is first to make vacuum pressure inclination of the porosity of the material of the wood by first degassing the porosity and then incorporate the resin and put some pressure to have a good penetration of the wool volume. Then we trigger the cross-linking, the polymerization by cross-linking with the gamma irradiation, obtaining a very stable 3D net in solid form, which is a thermoset plastic. So you can see the preparation, the first infiltration before consolidation, we have to clean. This is not COVID test, this is just cleaning. And then the impregnation, we have a tank of 3,000 liters, in which we can make first vacuum, then pressure. And then we put the sculpture under irradiation to make harden the resin. And we have all the different pieces that are hardened. And then the conservator can do their job of classical restoration, assembly, structural filling where there is some flake, fine putty to get the good level of relief, and color touch, and also support, and then the sculpture go back into the church, secure, very stable condition. Thank you.